In this video, we will look at something called GPU pass-through in Proxmox. And if you are not sure what a GPU pass-through is, you can imagine it as a process of detaching your graphic card from Proxmox and attaching it or passing it through entirely to one of your virtual machines, so that virtual machine can fully utilize its resources, the graphic card resources, I mean. Because Proxmox doesn't really use graphic card. You usually connect to your Proxmox over your network, and even if you connect to your Proxmox directly over that HDMI port, then the only thing displayed on your monitor is the black screen that will show you just the IP and the port that you can use to connect to your Proxmox. But bear in mind, it is possible to troubleshoot your Proxmox using this black screen. It is a command line interface to your Proxmox, so if you pass through this graphic card to your VM, you will lose that ability to troubleshoot using that Proxmox CLI. I hope that makes sense. But for me it's okay. I'd rather use this graphic card constantly in my VM rather than just leave it idle displaying just some IP address, you know. In this video, I will detach an integrated graphic card on my Intel N100 processor and I will pass it through to one of my Windows virtual machines. And the process will work for both Windows 10 and Windows 11. I tested it and it works for both of them. And I chose N100 processor, it's Intel 12th Gen processor, because it's very popular and many people have it in their home labs. But let's start from the very beginning. Before we do anything, we need to check our BIOS settings and see if a virtualization and so-called IOMMU is enabled at all. And I can get to my BIOS by simply powering on the device and then keep pressing the delete button on my keyboard. And the two options I need are the VTX. I mean, that will depend on the manufacturer, but because this is Intel processor, the settings are usually called something like VTX or virtualization technology. And the other one is on the AMD, it's called IOMMU, and on Intel, it's called VT-d, but it's basically IOMMU as well. I do not want to talk about exactly what it is, that technology, and what it does. You just simply have to know that you have to have them both enabled. And then I can simply install Proxmox. And by the way, you can see full detailed video on how to install Proxmox if you have never installed one, but it's pretty straightforward process. And at the end of the installation process, the only output you get from Proxmox via that HDMI port is this black screen that I mentioned already, which displays only IP address and the port, which means now I can access my Proxmox from anywhere in my network. So I connect to my Proxmox, it displays that connection is not private, which is fine, that's because of the certificate, but I can progress anyways. And this is freshly installed Proxmox 9. The first thing we need is to just go to the PV repositories, do the standard stuff, like disabling enterprise, that's for me at least, and adding no subscription license. Then I go to updates, I say refresh. Then I want to do one more thing, I go to the shell, and now I say apt update. Well, maybe before I do that, I run uname r. That shows me the current kernel version 6.14.8. Now I say apt update. And I run apt dist upgrade. I say yes to all. And we can see it pulls newer version of kernel, which is 6.14.11 PVE. I simply like to do that at the very beginning, before I install anything else. That's completed, now I say reboot. I want to reboot my Proxmox, so all the changes are applied properly. It takes only a few seconds anyways. Now after a while I can simply click somewhere else maybe. It's still loading, but I should be back up in a few seconds. Alright, now I say uname-r again, and I can see my kernel upgraded from .8 to .11. And now I want to create my Windows VM. To do that, I need the ISO first. You have to grab them from Microsoft. I say upload. Windows 10 maybe, because it's quicker to install and it's smaller image. But it works for Windows 10 and for Windows 11 as well, as I said, this process. And the installation process is basically the same as well, with small exception about the TPM. But if you want to see full detailed instruction on how to install Windows 11, there is a separate dedicated video just for that. So if you want step-by-step process, you can watch that, but here I want to focus only on the bits that are important for our pass-through process, because there are some things that have to be done during Windows installation, options that have to be chosen, so our pass-through will work as expected. So that's the ISO done. I have to also upload the VT-d disk, which I also have here. These are basically the drivers for my Windows machine. And we talked about it in that previous video as well, about when we were installing Windows 11. So that's done, which means I can now create my VM. I will say maybe ID 240, name will be Win10, Windows 10, and I click next. Nothing important here for our pass-through, but here in the next, no, not here as well. Here we will just choose Windows ISO, we choose guest OS as Windows, Microsoft Windows, it's Windows 10, and I want to add the additional drive for VT-d drivers. And I've got them uploaded already here. This is pretty standard, I say next, and now it's very important bit. And the graphic card, it can stay as default for now. This is basically very slow emulated graphic card, that's why we want to pass through our stronger dedicated graphic card to this Windows VM later on. But for now I can choose default, but for machine I want to choose Q35. But even more important option is this BIOS, and I want to use UEFI, or OVMF it's called here. OVMF UEFI, yes, that's what we want to choose. And you have to pick the storage for that as well. I have only one partition here, so I choose that. So basically those two settings are very important. Machine has to be Q35 and BIOS, UEFI BIOS. And we can also add QEMU and TPM. TPM is more important for Windows 11, but maybe if I want to upgrade this one later on, I want to have that TPM already. So I choose the storage for TPM and I choose version V20, and we discussed that in that Windows 11 installation process. And I say next, and here just I will increase the disk, but none of these settings are important for pass-through. I will add disk card and SSD emulation, because it is SSD drive in fact, but none of these should really affect our GPU pass-through process. I say next, and now cores, I want to choose 4 cores, but for the type I want to choose the host. It's at the very bottom, it gives me the best performance and it gives me the least headache. That's why I go for that. It's type host, and CPU cores I choose 4 because that's all cores I have. This B-Link S12, that's what I'm using, only has 4 cores because N100 processor has 4 cores. And I say next. Memory, I will disable ballooning maybe. I will go for 12288 maybe, because I've got 16 gig here. I don't want to allocate all of it, but I will allocate quite a lot of memory to this Windows machine. I say next, nothing for me to change here. I say next, and confirm, yes. I say finish. My virtual machine is being created. And what I do now, I click on that Windows machine, I say start, and I have to be very quick here. I have to double click on that, so I'm being connected to it, because now it will show me, oh, if I want to start from DVD, yes, I have to press something, that's why I have to be pretty quick. This will start the Windows installation process on my Proxmox. And honestly, nothing interesting here, it's standard installation process, and nothing what I will do here will affect my GPU pass-through. I say custom install. Windows cannot see my drive, that's why we need that VT-d additional disk. I have to say load driver, I have to browse for that driver, and that's where the VT-d disk comes into play. The driver is in that AMD64, it's for Windows 10, so I click that W10, I say OK, pass-through controller for SCSI. That's what I need. Windows should find it, and it should display the virtual drive that Proxmox created for it. And I can see it, it's 100 gig. And I install my Windows on this drive. I'm not sure what they changed in Windows 11, but Windows 11 takes so much longer than Windows 10 installation. That's why I prefer playing with Windows 10 still. And that's fine, process completed. I want to add the My Computer icon. And then if we right click and click Manage, we can go to the Device Manager, and we can see that for the display adapters, we've got that basic display adapter. This is emulated graphic card. It's not even graphic card, it's the CPU pretending it's a graphic card. I can see I've got Ethernet controller missing. I can update the driver, search my computer, browse, and should be net KVM, or yeah, this one. That's basically it. The Windows is up and running, but I can shut it down now. And we can go. As you can see, I've got opened two tabs. One is for Proxmox PVE docs. It's a PCI pass-through guide. And the other one is also from Proxmox, but it's wiki for PCI pass-through. And you can read both of them. There are a bit different informations, like it's all about the pass-through, but a little bit different information in one link and different in another. And by the way, all the commands and all the links that I use, you will find on my GitHub repo, which is displayed right now. If you go there, you will find all the information and all the commands that I use here in this video. Let's follow maybe that wiki. Let's go from the beginning. It says requirements. That's what I said. VT-d, the processor has to be capable of VT-d, or that IOMMU as I was talking about, and then you have to enable that in BIOS. That's what we did. So now it says verify IOMMU is enabled. Reboot, well, I rebooted already, which means I can copy that. And let's go to our PVE, to the console. I will paste it here. And what I need? There should be a line that looks like DMAR IOMMU enabled. And right now I can't see that exact line, but we will go back to it. So next I check DMS grep remapping. I go here again. It says enabled remapping. That's basically yes, I've got that. Looks like the IOMMU was not fully enabled. That's what I mentioned. This is the other web page which has additional information, and it says that this should be enabled, but for some reason it doesn't display as expected. So what you can do, you can enable it via the kernel command line. And if I open this tab for kernel command line, you will see that there are two options. You either run your Proxmox with grub bootloader or systemd boot. And how do you know which one it is? The easiest way to recognize it, if you've got that blue screen at the very beginning when the Proxmox boots up, that usually means you run grub. But if you've got only black screen, that usually means you've got systemd boot. Because these commands will be slightly different for grub and for systemd boot. I know I am running grub, so I can update this file and then run update grub. Let's do that then. I go to my Proxmox, and I say nano etc default grub. And in this line here, where it says quiet, I will add those options. Intel IOMMU on, Intel IOMMU pass-through, and PS state I will disable that. So Ctrl O, Enter, Ctrl X, and now as per instruction it says update grub. So I say update grub. And I say reboot. Now I should be back up shortly. There it is. Let's up arrow and run this. And now I can clearly see IOMMU enabled. That's exactly what is expected here. IOMMU enabled. And let's run this command again, just to make sure. It still says remapping enabled as well, which means we can go back to the instruction and go further. It says if your system doesn't support remapping, you can try this, but our system does support it, so that's cool. We can go further, verify IOMMU isolation. This checks if our graphic card is in a separate IOMMU group. Here is the example, and let me run this command and I will show you what it means. I run this command, I copy it, but node name, we will have to change that. If I go here, if I paste this command, the node name is whatever you call your node. By default it's PVE. So let me change this to PVE. I click enter. And this shows those IOMMU groups. And I can see that my Alder Lake Ultra HD graphic is in group 0, and nothing else belongs to that group 0, that means I don't have to worry about it. My graphic is in separate IOMMU group. I can go further then, And now we can start passing through our GPU. It says blacklisting drivers. First we have to know what drivers are used by our graphic card in the first place. And for this I can use command, maybe let me clear that. I can use command lspci nnk. I press enter. If I go up, this is my graphic card and it says that driver in use is i915. That's what I'm interested in. That's what I have to blacklist. You see there are two kernel modules though, i915 and xe. If blacklisting this doesn't help, you might have to blacklist both of them, but let's blacklist just i915 first. We go back to this tab and it says for Intel GPU it's exactly this command. It creates this file and it puts this in that file. Let me show you. In etc modprobe d, if I go to etc modprobe d, if I list all the files, there is no blacklist.conf file right now. But if I run this command, I paste it here. If I run again lsl, now we can see this file was added, and if we check what's inside, it says blacklist i915. Strangely, what this doesn't say is but the other instruction says that after this operation you have to run this command, update initramfs. So we run that and we reboot again. While this is rebooting, let's go back to our instruction and this one doesn't say much more. If we go back to the other one, you can see similar instructions, some more VFIO commands if we need one. That's what we did already. But what we are looking for is output of this command really should show us that. Either that or no driver in use at all. Let me show you what I mean. If I copy that command, we already ran it before, but let me run it again. Now if I go up, look at that. Remember? It previously said kernel driver in use i915. Currently it doesn't display anything. It only lists kernel modules, but it doesn't say which driver is in use. That's what you want to see. You want to see either that or you want to see that kernel driver in use is VFIO PCI. Which means now we can attempt to pass through our GPU to our virtual machine. And there is a lot of information here about VM configuration, but basically let's just go and try that. I go to my VM, I go to hardware, and I want to add hardware. My hardware is PCI device, and raw device is this, is my Ultra HD graphics. I choose that, I choose PCI Express for better compatibility, but I will not choose primary GPU yet. Let's add it as it is, and let's see what happens. I will start my VM, and it started fine. I double click on that, and now if I log on, this is my Windows, go to Device Manager. Looks like there is one more PCI communication controller missing, but I'm not bothered about this one. But what you can see, and what we are interested in, is this display adapter. It is now displayed as Microsoft Basic Display Adapter, but it's actually the integrated graphic card. But what you can see, it's that little yellow triangle. If I click on that, if I right click on that and go to Properties, you can see code 31. It says Windows cannot load the drivers required. Let's click OK, and the fact is this will change to code 43 later on. If I leave it as it is, or even what I can do is say update driver, browse my computer. If I browse entire virt.io, this will not help me. But if I wait for quite a while, the Windows will... Oh, look at that! It just happened when I was talking. Now Windows detected its Intel Ultra HD graphics. And that's coincidence. Okay, but let me right click, and if I go to Properties now we've got code 43. And probably many of you already are familiar with this code. It's very popular when you pass through the devices to Windows. And now, for every single device, the solution might be slightly different. I found a solution for my billing with N100 CPU, but if you have different hardware, your solution, oh look at that, it tries to install the Intel graphics software. I can say launch, it found it in the meantime now, that's cool, but I can tell you already it will not help me with this code 43. What I really have to do now is I have to close this, I will shut down the entire VM. The solution to that problem is you have to download a custom ROM from this website. It's from GitHub and it's custom ROM for N100 processor. If I press enter, I can see it downloaded, download complete, which means this link works as expected, but basically you want to use this website. Why? Because you have to download it to your Proxmox, not here to your whatever computer you are currently on. So let's go back to Proxmox. Let's go to node, let's go to shell, and I can paste that link, but at the very beginning I say wget. I press enter, this downloads this file to the Proxmox. If I run lsl, I can see this file exactly here in this location, and that's the name of this file. My current location is /root. And now I want to copy this file to user share kvm. So I say copy 12, whatever it's called, to user share kvm, and then the name of this file again, 100 q rom. So the name will be exactly the same as it is here, but you can rename it if you want. I will just keep it the same. If I now go there, cd user share kvm, if I run lsl, you will see many different ROMs, but at the very top you will see the one that we've just copied. And now the next part, I go to etc pve QEMU, and if you list files here, you will see all configuration files for every single VM that you have, and the name of the file will match the ID of the virtual machine itself. My ID is 240, so it disappeared. So the file is called 240.conf, and I say nano240.conf because we want to modify this file now. I want to add another line here. I will copy paste it, it's pretty long. But let me also explain what we are doing here. The problem is not with the Proxmox itself. The problem is with virtual machine. Our Windows virtual machine is kind of aware that it's running as a VM. And the graphic drivers are not very happy about that and say like, no, sorry, I'm just not running in this environment. It's something that is a bit more complicated, but never mind. And we are trying to resolve this. So those args will change the behavior of how this graphic is presented to the virtual machine, this first long line. What we also want to change is how CPU is presented to the virtual machine. Currently it's just host, but I want to add another flag which is called hidden. That will hide some information about the processor that would give our Windows VM a clue that this is like passed-through processor. We don't want that information to go to the VM. We want them hidden. That's why we add this here in this config file. And the last thing, probably the most important thing, is for that host PCI 0. For that, we want to add, let me paste again, we want to add our specific ROM file, this custom ROM file, for this host PCI device that we are going to pass through. So I say ROM file equals that 12-N100 file. I can add one more thing, xvga equals 1. This will make this device a primary device. And now with this configuration, I say again, Ctrl O, Enter, Ctrl X. And if I go to the VM now, to the hardware, we can see all that information here. You can see the ROM file, that last bit xvga, that actually made it primary GPU, and we can see the ROM file location here, and PCI Express for better compatibility. And now, when I run my VM, I start it, it says OK, and if I double click on that, no VNC. And you might think that's something wrong, but no, that's very good information. It looks like our graphic card has been successfully passed through, which means there is no output here in the console. So where is the output? The output should be now directly via HDMI to my monitor. So I can now switch my monitor input to see what my billing is pumping through the HDMI. Look at that, it's Windows. Can you see one problem though? We won't be able to get into that Windows because we don't have a USB device like keyboard or mouse, yes? What you have to do then is you have to kill this instance first. I mean, you can try to shut it down, but you might be unsuccessful doing that. What will definitely kill this, I mean, we simply have to stop it, yes? We have to go to PVE, to the shell, you run ps-aux command, and you grep for the ID of your VM. Oh, look at that, it worked. But if it didn't work, you still can grep for ID of your VM, like 240, and you will have very long output for one of the processes. Like here are very short outputs, but you will find one, once the VM is running, one very long. You will have to then kill -9 and the process ID, like 6767. But we don't have to do it, because it shut down gracefully, that's cool. What you have to do now, you have to connect USB devices, like keyboard or mouse, directly to, in my case I have to connect them to my Beelink S12 Pro mini PC, and then I run ls USB. And in Proxmox I can see those devices that I've connected. It's a Razer keyboard and a Razer mouse. And what I need here are those identifiers, 8-digit identifier. And then I say qm set the virtual machine ID as USB 0 device, and the host, first one will be the keyboard, the 1C4F blah blah blah, and the other device will be virtual machine 240, USB 1, not USB 0 this time, USB 1, and the host, whatever is here, for this device, for my Razer mouse. I press enter, and if I go back to Windows, to my hardware, I can see those devices here. Let's start this virtual machine again, for the last time hopefully. Have to wait a bit. It says OK, which means now I should have output from that HDMI again. But now I can also use my keyboard and mouse to log on to Windows, yes? And here it is. You can already see the difference, and I get native performance for that VM. If I go to Device Manager, it shows me now Intel UHD graphics as its graphic card. And if I go to Properties, now this device is working properly. And if I check the processor, it's indeed Intel N100 processor. That's basically all I wanted to say. I hope it helped you to pass through your graphic card, so thank you for watching. Marek.